Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi. Oh, I'm very zoomed in. Just one moment.
Yeah, no, I
I
actually
need to
like I
move this back a little bit. That's better. I'm
no,
loving
it's
your
fine.
background, by the way.
Oh, thanks. These are balloons from last week because the book has been out for a week, at least it
I
has in the
know.
US. Yes, so
Congratulations.
thank you. So I kept the balloons up. I figured this is a good background for Instagram lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely is.
How are
You should have
you?
that all year round,
I know,
whether you've
right?
released a
Seriously.
book or not.
I know. No, no kidding. Someone else said
I
that.
know.
I should always be in front of pink balloons.
I know. And how's it been? Has it been like a whirlwind week?
Oh my gosh. Yes, it has. It's been really amazing. My goal with this was always to be able to give this information to anyone who could buy a book or borrow it from the library. And, the feedback has been so incredible. I just can't get over it. Women are just, they're completely blown away by the fact that no one told them this stuff and that, there's this much to learn about the menstrual cycle. It's so funny. One reviewer said that she was like, as soon as I saw this book, I thought, oh, there's no way I want to spend this much time reading about my period. But actually, I really did. So
Exactly. We should be taught these things in school. It should be mandatory reading rather than the terrible sex education and period talk that we get. We need your book to be in the hands of young girls and women all around the world.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, just, any book really that gives us this basic information. I actually wanted to show you that this is the UK version. It came in the mail to me.
Amazing.
It's a paperback, which,
Yay.
I didn't anticipate that until I got it in the mail, which I thought was so funny. But yeah, it's the paperback version, which is cool. This is what it'll look like in the US in a year. But yeah, and I actually just noticed that it's not on Amazon. It's not in stock yet still, but you can order, which is good because before you couldn't even order it. So I'm hoping that means it's going to ship soon.
Definitely. And why don't you give an overview of the book for those who are maybe tuning in or watching the replay who haven't? I doubt that they've not heard that you've released a book, but if they've been living under a rock these past couple of months, just give them a bit of an overview as to who could benefit from your book, what's covered in there, and why they should get their hands on it.
I'm just laughing because I'm just like, I'm not that well known, Vivian. Thanks, though.
Probably the people who follow me, and I just feel like we're in this little bit of an Instagram bubble,
We
and
are
if we go into
so
like the
true.
real world, people like will probably not know anything about periods or really care. But yeah, just give an overview for those
Yeah.
who don't know who you are, maybe, or the book that you're offering, what's in there.
Yes. Oh, I'd love to. So just in case anyone doesn't know, I'm a women's health coach and I've been doing this work for, gosh, it's going on 10 years now. And for me, my journey really began with my own period problems and not being able to get answers and just seeing the responses from women recently in the last few days, just saying things like, I've been to my doctor so many times. I have not been able to get an answer. I'm continually being offered a higher dose birth control pill as if that's going to solve my problems. And I'm so scared to go back. And there's such an unbelievable disempowerment as it relates to our menstrual cycles and just our bodies in general and what's going on. And this is so rooted in the fact that we've been taught from such a young age. Oh, sorry, that was loud. We've been taught from such a young age to almost distrust our bodies, to not really, to fear them in a way. And that to me is a massive problem. And I think that is what is continuing to perpetuate this cycle of, really crappy healthcare that women get. And I just think we deserve better. And that's what I did in this. And, it's really big. It's like 415 pages. And the reason for that is because I really wanted to explain to everyone who reads that this is information that's vital. It's almost life and death as far as I'm concerned. I've had clients who have had surgeries, to whatever it is, remove fibroids or endometriosis, and things go wrong. They get nicked. It can become life and death. So if we are not in the know, we don't understand this information or this important stuff about our bodies. Who is going to? I feel like it's up to us. And so that was my mission in writing this book. It was to give
Love
women their
that.
power back. Yeah.
And I know for me, my only option when I had amenorrhea or my skin was terrible, my hair was falling out, was the birth control pill or antidepressants, or just live with it really. See if you grow out of it, which would never have happened because the way that I was treating my body wasn't healthy. and things would have only got worse. So me being, I think it was like 18 or 19, if the pill was going to solve my hair and skin problems, I didn't really care about my periods, if I'm honest. But if he said that it would regulate my period, clear up all my problems, of course I was going to go on it, because nobody ever asked about my diet or my lifestyle. The fact that I was working out like 2 hours every single day and restricting my diet so much, no wonder my hormones were crazy. My body was trying to tell me that something was wrong, but I was just ignoring it because I didn't know that how important hormones were at the time. Now I know, so I'm doing everything I can every day to take care of my hormones and trying to spread this information to everyone else like you are.
Thank you. I am right there with you, and I could not agree with you more. I think that deep down, there's that body wisdom, there is that intuition about what's right and wrong for us, and yet we don't, because we've never been taught this really important information. We don't really listen to it because we're just, we're self-doubting, and the doctor knows more. The doctor's done the training. They're the expert. We're going to them to help us get fixed. And then, when they're saying these things, it doesn't resonate. And then we think we're crazy because they're telling us, well, this is the only way. So it's an awful cycle, like I was saying, of just going back and forth, doubting yourself, thinking you should trust a doctor, but not feeling like you should. And that we stay stuck in this for many years. I certainly did. And it sounds like you kind of did too.
Yeah, we're all the experts in our own body, and nobody at the end of the day cares more about our own health than we do. So we should all be empowered. We've all got this information at our fingertips, which is absolutely amazing. So things can be done. We can make these little changes every single day with what we eat, what's on the end of our fork, what time we go to bed. And they may seem very simple, but they are some of the most effective things, which is the best thing about it. A lot of them are free, really simple. You don't need to do any of these crazy restrictive diets. Get back to basics, and a lot of the time your hormones regulate naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. I think you broke up there for a minute, so I didn't totally hear what
Yeah, the connection cut out a little bit. That's okay. So yesterday I was asking as well on my Instagram stories if any of the people who follow me had any questions for you, and I got a few questions. A lot of them were quite similar because PMS and period problems are very common these days, but I've got a list of questions here, and if anyone's listening live and you've got questions, you can write them in the comment section, and hopefully Nicole can answer some of them over the next few minutes. So I think we've got 20 minutes or so. Hopefully the connection stays put. If anyone can comment and just let me know if both of us are coming up connected. Yeah. Hopefully. So we'll start off with some questions. And the first one is on endometriosis.
Yes.
So there's a risk, obviously, with the procedure of a laparoscopy, kind of being cut open and figuring out if you have endometriosis present or not. How do you know when it's time to investigate further, or is it something that you can just start treating anyway, or do you need a proper diagnosis?
I know that's a really great question, actually. When I saw it, because you sent me the questions, and I was like, that's a really good one. And, I think a lot of this comes back to, again, knowing our own bodies, right? So when do you think is a good time to start investigating this further or potentially do the exploratory surgery? I think so much of this is dependent on the symptoms that you're experiencing, because we have been, again, we've been sort of led to believe that these life or death periods, meaning that, we have these awful symptoms that completely disrupt our whole lives, is totally normal and okay. And I think that if that is happening for you, then you 100% have to get to the next stage. I mean, you have to start to make changes, whatever that is. I outlined this whole protocol. It's a 6-week program in the book, because I feel like if we don't have those things under control, then we're really not going to be able to move on to the next stage of healing. Because some of us do need later stages of healing. Some of us might have mold toxicity. We might have, an underlying autoimmune disease, and all of those can be helped with what I share. But that to me is like stage 2. So I feel like getting stage 1 of your health, so that's your nutrition, your blood sugar, your gut, your liver, your thyroid, and your stress under control is going to change. I mean, change things so drastically. You know this, Vivian. We've seen this over and over in our work. And so when you start to do that, all of those impact endometriosis. They impact the symptoms of endometriosis. So I would say that if your life is so disrupted and you're living in a lot of pain, or you have heavy bleeding, or you have other symptoms, start hair. I would start hair, and work with a doctor who you really trust. I think that's the other thing too, is that someone who comes highly referred, who has a lot of experience with laparoscopic surgery and potentially excision surgery, if that's the route that you're going to end up having to go down, is critical. So, I mean, that's what I would say. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, if you wanted to add anything in.
Yeah, I see a lot of women as well being very, not scared, but very resistant to go down the conventional medical path. Maybe because they have been let down by conventional doctors previously, but they're very against using antibiotics, getting any type of surgical procedure done. But I always say, like, there's a time and a place with nutrition and things. Obviously, what we do really does shine, but I always say if I get knocked down by a car, touch wood, that doesn't happen. I want to be straight into A&E. I want all the medications. I want all the life-saving surgery that is possible. So there is a time and a place. So if anyone's like very resistant to conventional treatment, just understand that there's pros and cons, and there's a time and a place for it. Don't be completely against things like medications, because they can be life-saving and really important at times.
Such a good point. I couldn't agree with you more. I do think that we have been let down, like you said, so often that it's hard to trust. But that's where that your trust of yourself and your intuition around what's right and wrong for you will really come in handy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And then the next question, the condition PCOS can go alongside endometriosis quite commonly. It's one of the most, I think, the most common endocrine disorder in women of reproductive years. So a lot of people have PCOS. There's different types, there's different drivers behind it. Yeah. But someone asked, how do I get my period back if I have PCOS? I know this could probably take us 2 hours to cover, but just some main points for this person to take away.
Yeah, I know whole books have been written on PCOS. So, I would say the first thing is, gosh, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but with PCOS and endometriosis, I mean, these are, of course, they're genetic underpinnings. My friend, Dr. Felice Gersh, she's written a great book on PCOS, actually. She has a couple books on PCOS, and she talked about it being a 50,000-year-old condition, which I found fascinating. And she was talking about the genetic side of things, where our genes were set up in a way that we were not, when we lived in scarcity times, they were helpful to us. They kept us alive. Nowadays, in the world that we live in, where, food is available pretty much on every corner at every hour of the day, and not great food either. As we all know, our food supply has been really corrupted, for lack of a better word. And, our nutrient deficiencies are, I think, more pronounced than ever before, along with the stress that we're dealing, and then the environmental toxins. It's a perfect storm for a condition like PCOS, for a condition like endometriosis, or even adenomyosis, because the systems in our bodies aren't able to work properly because we don't have the right nutrients. And in addition to that, they're not able to work properly because we're bombarded by environmental chemicals that are so damaging to our health. So we have things working against us, unfortunately. However, there are solutions. And, I would say with you trying to get your period back, like, we always have to focus on these pillars. And so with PCOS, for instance, one of the key contributors are nutrient deficiencies. So that, you have to work on that first. So you have to start with the foundation of food. What are you eating? Is your blood sugar imbalanced? So that's the next step, is making sure that your blood sugar is as stable as possible. And I walk everyone through that in week 2, because that was one of my biggest problems. I also had PCOS-like symptoms as a teenager and in my early 20s, where my period wouldn't come for 3-4 months at a time. I definitely had that darker hair growth that, has gone away pretty much completely, as I got older. And, multiple other symptoms that, just at the time I had no idea. But the point is that if our blood sugar is out of control, insulin, that hormone that regulates blood sugar, is going to impact how your ovaries function. and it's not pretty. It actually, insulin essentially makes your ovaries make more testosterone, especially in women who are predisposed to PCOS. Then you start to have these symptoms. More testosterone means that feedback loop between your ovaries and your brain is disrupted and ovulation doesn't happen. So if ovulation is not happening, you're not going to get a period. So the goal with PCOS is to make sure that ovulation is happening on a consistent basis, if possible. And with that, you've got to focus on the nutrients, and then you have to focus on the blood sugar. And then from there, focus on your gut health to reduce inflammation. So those are the three drivers of PCOS, in my opinion. And I really think that that's really what we need to be focused on. So I would say start there, because you can take supplements, of course, but the supplements aren't necessarily going to work if you've got all of these underlying problems that are not addressed yet.
I had questions as well on carbohydrates and hormones. So this kind of ties into the blood sugar, insulin piece. And I think there's two sides. Like, people say that you need carbohydrates at every meal. It's the molecule, glucose is the molecule that your body runs on. And if you go too low carb, ketogenic, or just not having enough carbohydrates in the diet, that can be a stress on the body. It can worsen your PCOS in some cases. So what are your thoughts on hormones and carbohydrates, especially for PCOS?
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. I wrote about this because I feel like, there is no one diet, right? And you know this, like, there's no one diet that's going to work for everyone. And so I would say that the first thing is to figure out your own blood sugar issues. And that's what I always recommend and have for years, is testing your own blood sugar using a glucometer. And that is how you're going to determine whether carbohydrates and how much of them works for you. So, I had a client once who couldn't eat just a regular Granny Smith green apple without spiking up her blood sugar. She would have to eat half of an apple with peanut butter or with almond butter or something like that, with some kind of protein, because it just, didn't work for her. So I think that some of us are more carbohydrate sensitive than others. And I find that to be fascinating. But it makes a lot of sense, right? Because we're all genetically different. We also have different microbiomes. Our pancreases work differently. There are all of these contributing factors. So I would say that, I have seen women go low carb and get their period back who have PCOS. And then I've seen women who go low carb and lose their periods and, develop amenorrhea. And so I think that really it comes back to us. You can continue to look outside of yourself and, find these, these different diets, but ultimately, until you're tracking your own numbers, these parameters, it's hard to say like what's right for you and what's not. You can try it, of course, and see how you feel too, because that's the other thing, right? Like, all of these people have all of these diet options, but if you are not feeling good, like, for instance, I've had many women say to me they've lost their periods on a low carb diet. I'm like, that's not the diet for you. Like, that's not going to work for you. Clearly your period is telling you that is not okay. So I think that that's really what we have to come back to, is like tracking our cycles, knowing what's changing when we change our diet. And if it's positive, great. If it's negative, then we have to make adjustments.
So your period would be like your monthly report card, or like 2 to 3 months on average. It takes to reflect your diet changes and everything. But even simple things like how you feel after eating. Do you feel like you need to take a nap after you've had your dinner? Or do you feel like your blood sugar's dropping between meals? Is your sleep getting worse than usual? Are you moodier than you usually are, more irritable? These could all be signs that what you're doing in your diet isn't necessarily working well. So I love that explanation, and tracking for me in terms of blood sugar really helped, because I could eat 50 grams of carbohydrates from quinoa or buckwheat and be absolutely fine, be totally stable. My blood sugar would be amazing. But then I'd eat 50 grams of carbohydrates from potato, sweet potato even, and my blood sugar would be through the roof. So the same serving size, the same time of day, I'd still combine it with protein and fat, and it was a completely different response. It could even be the type of carbohydrate, even though it's healthy. Everyone's very different. So I recommend everyone trying the blood glucose monitor, but not getting too tied into monitoring everything and tracking everything, because you can become a little bit obsessed with numbers and you forget to listen to your own body and feedback.
Oh, it's so true. I love that you said that, by the way, because when I eat quinoa, it makes my blood sugar go crazy. I'm starving with it 30 minutes of eating it, but not with sweet potato. Surprise.
Okay, so we're completely
Yeah,
opposite.
that works. This is we're a perfect example, ladies,
Exactly.
of the differences in how we respond to certain foods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. So another one is someone who's wanting to stop the pill
Yeah.
because she's starting to realize like it's not working for her. She's getting some symptoms, and she's also wanting to try and conceive, but she's asking how long ideally should she wait until she tries to conceive after stopping the pill, and any tips to help with that post pill kind of period.
Oh yeah. Oh girl, I know. I've so been there. I would say that first of all, I think that 6 months, at a minimum after you've stopped the pill, but also implementing everything in here. Or any book really that is going to support your fertility. I really, for me, it's like, yes, of course I want people to buy my book, but I think that anything that you feel really resonates with you is so critical. And I would say that that to me is the key component. We have got to be supporting our bodies after coming off the pill, because like this lady said, she's having symptoms and it's not really working for her. And so I think that when we are starting to see symptoms, it means that there have been, this has been going on under the radar for a long time, potentially. So it's really important for her to make sure that she waits a minimum of 6 months, and also make sure too that she's getting her period back regularly, tracking your basal body temperature and your cervical fluid changes so that you know that you're definitely ovulating. Making sure that your nutrients are, on par, meaning that you're eating really well. You're also working on repairing your gut, because the pill definitely has a number on gut health. I felt like I was, I had colonoscopy. I had a colonoscopy when I was on the pill because I had such severe digestive issues. So it doesn't mean it's going to be as severe for someone else, but I think that the pill is the pill is the pill. It does what it does. And, I think that so nutrient status, supporting your gut health, and also supporting your liver detoxification pathways, which I talk through in great detail. And that's the thing, right? It's like, doesn't matter if you're on the pill or off the pill. It doesn't matter if you have PCOS. It doesn't matter if you have endometriosis. All of these pillars are going to be helpful, no matter what symptom or issue you're dealing with.
And it's going to help your experience of pregnancy, your birth, your child's future health, your recovery postpartum. So it's not just going to help with conception, it's also going to help your long-term health, reduction of future chronic disease risk, your experience of menopause. So you can really never start too early. And I see people planning their wedding for like 2 to 3 years, but they don't plan when they want to get pregnant. They just come off the pill, decide they want to get pregnant, and they expect to fall pregnant the very next month. And
Yes.
we really need to give our body time, but it really does pay off in the long run to be patient. And your chances of success will actually be much higher if you address the gut, the liver, the blood sugar, the nutrients, all of those things.
Oh, amen. I love that you just said that. It's so true. It's literally, you guys, this impacts generations. We have to take this seriously. I love that you equated it to wedding planning, because it's so true. We don't even think about this stuff. Nobody puts any emphasis on what you need to be doing to prepare your body for pregnancy and for having a healthy baby. I mean, like, when you think about the nutrient deficiencies alone and what that predisposes you and your baby to, it's crazy. So yes, I'm so glad you said that. So good. It's true.
And then you said about tracking, so basal body temperature, fertility awareness method, all of that. Some people don't actually see any real cervical mucus at all. Like, what could be going on there? Is that abnormal? And are there any ways that they can improve cervical mucus?
Yeah, that's a good one. I got that question yesterday as well. And, I think that, again, this is all connected, right? So when you think about how your cervix functions and the fact that, if you've been on the pill for any length of time, really the mechanism there is that the cervix essentially stops working. It sort of becomes a little bit defunct because you're not having this cyclical ovulatory hormone production that's happening. So the estrogen that you would be making by your ovaries, consistently for that first half of your cycle is just not there. So you just, you're taking a pill with a synthetic estrogen. So your cervix is not, it's just not working properly anymore. So it's not producing that fertile quality cervical fluid in response to your estrogen. And so as a result, that when we get off the pill, it takes a while. It can take a while, I've found. And what I find again is, supporting yourself nutritionally, making sure that your blood sugar is stable again, and making sure that your liver is working properly. Man, it's amazing. Like when I take supportive, liver supportive supplements, I mean, this has been this case since I was in my early 20s when I came off the pill. But just generally, what I find is that the next month, my cervical fluid is incredible. It's just like, it's perfect. And so I would say that that's really one of the key places to focus. And then also too, think about blood flow to your pelvic area. So think about, vaginal steaming and castor oil packs. I don't know how people feel about these things, but for me, they've worked not only for myself, but also for a lot of my clients over the years. So I feel like castor oil packs in particular bring so much blood flow to this pelvic area. And that's really what we need, because that's bringing nutrients. It's bringing that blood flow, like I said, so it's improving circulation to these organs. So all of that is going to help, I think.
And then something like very, very, very simple that I don't want people to overlook would be hydration. So your body needs water, fluids to actually create fluids and lubrication. Got mine here as well. Yep.
Yeah.
So don't overlook something very simple like that.
Yes.
Really important.
Yeah,
and then
so
my last question from what I got, and then we're going to wrap it up, is digestive issues around ovulation. What could be going on here?
Oh, yes. Okay. So digestive issues around ovulation are interesting. And it's something that I started to notice happening to me about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I was just like, this is strange. And it makes sense because I find that in our mid 30s, things start to shift and we're not entirely sure what's going on. So that's, if anyone is having that, symptoms are starting to crop up, just know that, our bodies are just not as resilient as they were when we were 25. And so things do definitely change. But of course, if you're supporting yourself, then, it's going to be very minimal, if anything at all. But what I noticed is this bloating that, would be so uncomfortable. And I was like, all right. So I started to work on my gut health because I was stressed. I was like dealing with a whole bunch of life and work things. And so, it definitely improved and pretty much disappeared. But what I see is ovulatory pain. So like sharp pains, and sometimes that you feel in your gut too, as well as, that bloating that's really uncomfortable. Lots of gas, which is also not great. And yeah, so those are the main ones that I see. I don't know if there was anything specific that she was describing, but what I found is a few things. I think the first is, estrogen is really high at that time. Estrogen definitely shifts what's going on with your microbiome. So that's important to think about. The second thing is that, again, what's going on with your liver? Is your liver able to actually process all of that estrogen that's high in your body to trigger ovulation to happen? So that's the next thing too, like what's going on there. And then the other thing to think about too is that prostaglandins, which also play a role in what's happening with your uterus when you get your period, they cause the uterine muscles to contract and constrict. And so then, they cramp and then they release the lining. Prostaglandins are interesting because they actually play a role in what ovulation too. So prostaglandins and proteolytic enzymes actually help to break down that the follicle so that the egg can be released. So it thins that follicle out. So when we are highly inflamed, so when there's gut stuff happening, there's liver stuff happening, we don't have the right nutrients, we are exposed to too many environmental toxins, that ongoing sort of internal inflammation raises prostaglandins. So you might notice more pain. You might notice gut health, like bowel movement issues during that time of your cycle as well. So all of these can be addressed by looking at the foundational pieces of of healing that I was talking about, that I have been talking about ad nauseum. So that's what I would say is typically triggering of ovulation symptoms.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely. And then, sorry, have you got time for one more question? I just noticed someone wrote one.
Yeah, I saw someone posted something earlier.
Yeah. Oh, it's from another Viv. She said, is it normal to get sore, heavy breasts or nipples before your period? So would you say that it's normal to get any symptoms at all? Like, should we be completely symptom free, or is it normal to have some odd symptoms like cramps or mood swings, fatigue, breast tenderness before our periods?
Yes. So I would say it's no. It's statistically physically normal, not necessarily biologically normal. And when I say that, what I mean is, of course, there are going to be changes. There are physiological changes during the second half of your cycle because your hormones are fluctuating. So yes, there's definitely changes that are happening, but sore, heavy boobs, that is, I don't consider that to be a normal thing, or at least something that, should be biologically happening every month. And the reason for it is, it's multifaceted. Someone asked me today about high estrogen and low progesterone, and she's confused because the symptoms are so similar. I'm like, well, because they usually go hand in hand. I mean, they work like a seesaw. So they're two hormones that are, that work in tandem with each other. And so if estrogen is high, typically progesterone and high estrogen. So it just depends. It's how they relate to each other. But that is one of the symptoms of that. And so what I found is that, again, nutrient deficiencies, iodine is one of those that can trigger this, this breast pain that you might experience in the lead up to your period. Low progesterone as well. Remember, estrogen is a stimulating hormone. So it's going to stimulate breast tissue and your hips to grow and your uterine lining to grow. But progesterone tapers that effect. And so if we're deficient in progesterone or estrogen is just too high in relation to progesterone, you might notice these symptoms. So it might be accompanied by bloating and, period pain if you get your period, or cramping leading up to your period. It might also be accompanied by spotting in the lead up to your period. 3 days or more of spotting is not considered normal either. So these are the kind of PMS type symptoms that you might notice. And they just become more heightened the more imbalanced your hormones become. So that's really the scale that we have to measure it on, is if you have symptoms that are mild and not disruptive to your life, I don't consider that to necessarily be a big deal. I think maybe you could probably clean up a few things, but if you have these real, I have women who say they can't even put on a bra. And, and that's not okay. So I would say that, it's really dependent on the symptoms and the severity of it, but really focusing again on, what's happening in each of these phases of my healing protocol is going to be crucial to addressing that.
Yeah. And I just noticed some other questions, but these will all be answered in your book, which I highly recommend people go and grab a copy of. Things like liver detoxification, irregular periods, what causes them. And you were also on my podcast last week. It's episode 68 of the Hormones in Harmony podcast. We talked for a good hour, I think over an hour, on all of these subjects. Vaginal steaming is even mentioned, which I know is a controversial one, but you really did a good job at explaining the benefits. So if anyone's interested in learning more, check that episode out, pick up a copy of Nicole's book. Yeah, it's a real gem, and I'm referring back to it all the time, and we'll be pointing all of my clients towards it to get some more answers for healing their hormones naturally.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. Yes, everyone,
welcome.
I'm going to do lives on my own Instagram account too. So if you guys want to come on there, you can definitely just make sure you turn on notifications, and I can answer all of these questions as well. But yes, it's all in the book. The irregular periods for sure. That's a big one. So yeah, all in there.
Amazing. Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks, Vivian, so much. I'll see you soon.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.